Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. And it is nice to see you all here. And welcome to the fourth OGP local deep dive about fiscal openness. My name is Clara Romo, and I am part of the OGP local team and will be today's facilitator in this deep dive session. So before we start, just as we did in our previous sessions, we have translation available in 50 languages. To access captions, please scan this QR code using your phone. Let me just go through the slide there. Oh, sorry, the third one, okay. To access captions, please scan this QR code using your phone or tap on the link we are now sharing on the chat. Choose the language and click on Attend. If you are using your phone, you will be able to access the audio translation. For this, please select the speaker in the bottom right corner of your cell phone. If you have an iPhone, check your left side button and ensure your phone is not set to silent. Now, I would like to invite to please introduce yourselves on the chat, as many of you have been doing so far, I think. I have not seen the chat already, but please start doing that. If you can, we would also like you to tell us more about your name and where are you coming from. We will also like to invite you to turn your cameras on so that we can all see each other. It's always good to see your peers, your friends, and people you are connecting with through this community. Please also make sure you keep your mic muted so that we can listen to our speakers properly. Of course, we do want you to participate and interact as much as possible. So we kindly ask you to use the chat for questions, make comments, and contribute throughout the sessions. The speakers will be fully attentive to the chat, so we hope this becomes an enriching space for you as well. The last thing is that this session is going to be recorded for learning purposes. So I hope and we hope that's okay for everybody so far. Today, we are going to be talking about fiscal openness. Citizens have the right to know and take part in how their governments collect and spend money. Open up fiscal and spending processes is a powerful tool for improving the allocation of resources, enhancing transparency, and safeguarding against corruption. Fiscal openness commitments have been a historical popular theme among OGP members. Approximately 25% of OGP commitments are about fiscal openness, and many have delivered strong early results. These commitments include participatory budgeting and opening fiscal data. These actions not only promote transparency, but also empower citizens to engage meaningfully in shaping their community's development priorities. Our goal today is to explore how different fiscal openness initiatives at the local level can help foster fairer resources allocation and inspire new ideas for your context. But before we dive into this subject, we would like to have a quick survey with you. We'd like you to encourage you to take a moment and share your experience and involvement in fiscal openness efforts. We enabled a survey that will pop out in the Zoom window. So the questions are the following. Great, thank you, Mercedes, for this. So how expert do you feel you are on the subject of fiscal openness? So we have several options. Not a master, but confident. I have heard, but want to know more. I do not have a clue, and that's okay. The second question is, do you work on making your public finance more open? Yes or no, and that's okay again. And on the scale 1 to 5, being 5 the highest score, how would you rate the fiscal openness of your local government? So please, as you keep answering this poll, I would like to introduce what we are going to do today. Questions in the survey are in English, Spanish, and French, so please take a moment to answer those. While you're completing the poll, let me briefly outline today's session. We'll begin with a keynote from Stephen Davenport of the World Bank, who will set the stage by discussing the importance of fiscal openness at the local level. And then we'll move into our panel discussion with leaders in fiscal transparency, budget inclusion, participatory budgeting, and participation in audits. We'll wrap up with some key information on how to join the Open Gov Challenge, which will allow us to think about practical steps forward. We have an outstanding lineup of experts joining us today. Stephen Davenport from the World Bank, Laura Castillo from the International Budget Partnership, Abiodun Essiet from Abuja Municipality, and Renzo Lavin, who is an expert and independent consultant on open government. We want to thank them for taking the time to share their knowledge and expertise with all of us. But before we hand it out to Stephen, let's take a moment to revisit the poll and review the results. So maybe we're ending the poll right now. So it's good to see that many of you are not masters, but feel very confident about fiscal openness. So this is a good clue, but most of you haven't heard about and want to know more. So we hope this deep dive helps you understand better and in better detail on what fiscal openness is at the local level. Do you work on making your local public finance more open? And that's, wow, 68% of a yes. That's great. So you can also share your knowledge and experiences through the Zoom chat. So please do not hesitate on posing questions and also comments. We will be glad if you could do that and share with the wider community of Open Gov. And also on the scale of 1 to 5 being the five the highest score, how would you rate the fiscal openness in your local government? So we see that most of you think it's at number 3. So there's tons of opportunity still to start working towards this and forward fiscal openness in our municipalities and our localities or whichever context we work in. So that's great. Thank you for participating in this. And now I would give the floor to our next speaker. So it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Stephen Davenport from the World Bank. Stephen is the global lead for anti-corruption, openness, and transparency at the World Bank Group and brings over 20 years of experience in program innovation and e-government. He's been involved in groundbreaking innovations, including the creation of the Open Gov Hub, the feedback labs, and data. And today he will talk about the importance of fiscal openness and what opportunities lie ahead at the local level. So Stephen, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Sure.
And how much time do I have again? Sorry.
10 minutes.
Okay, great. So I'm Steve Davenport. Had an overly long introduction. I hope we can get practical and have discussions. I have been working at the bank about 10 years. I was at the Development Gateway before that. And then I'm an IT engineer by background. And I have worked again. It's nice to see IBP and the government of Nigeria involved because I have been working with both of those guys for quite some time. And then I've also worked with OGP in over the last 8 years or so. So I might know several of you, but I work primarily now on the government side. So, part of our program on open government, the first order of business was to break that down into pieces, right? Open government, so that we could talk to the governments about particular aspects of it, because open government by itself was a bit too big. So fiscal transparency was a key piece of that. Typically, what we had done in the past was we partner ourselves, the World Bank, with the best international NGO we can find on that topic, which was the IBP at the time. And they had the Open Budget Survey, as you know, which allowed rankings and ratings for fiscal transparency. And just to be clear, that was back when fiscal transparency was just budget transparency. But now, I would encourage everybody to think of fiscal openness as financial budget transparency, contract and procurement transparency, and to some extent, tax transparency. So we do need to expand our definition a bit, especially as we move to the local level. So the biggest incentives, because we work with governments primarily, not civil society all the time. We did with GPSA and we do enter the area of CSOs, and that's why we partnered with the OGP, was to have a platform that was both government and civil society to work with at the country level, and that's been more or less successful. As you know, it depends on the country on how strong OGP and the stakeholder forum is, but to the extent it's strong, you can use it as leverage to get things done. So again, we worked a lot with IBP and OGP to create those incentives for fiscal openness. And then we tried to support particular commitments. So using the OBI score, the ranking, most governments that we work with want to increase their score. There's a lot of peer pressure. And if they're also wanting to be a member of the OGP, there's pressure there to increase fiscal openness because it's an eligibility criteria. And then the events, the big summits where they can announce their membership and show their progress was also very important to us to get governments on board. And then downstream of that, at the beginning, a lot of the OGP commitments were about national, federal budget transparency, which again was a good incentive. But to the point of this meeting, going subnational is even more important. So one of the biggest challenges we had was budget transparency is fantastic, but is anybody really using it? Does anybody understand it? And does anybody particularly care about the aggregate numbers across government? What was more interesting was state level budget transparency. So because that's closer to the state and the local government, it's closer to services and what people's expectations and their perceptions of their government are. And that's where we worked quite a bit in Nigeria. In particular, we had a large project, which I think you should probably take some time to unpack. And I'll put the blog post in the chat. But we decided to move with a project support from the World Bank. We decided to focus on state level budgets. And we got all the 30 plus states together to design citizen budgets. So that's where we worked with IBP. So it's important to work with partners at the state level and local level. So again, we worked with IBP. We worked with GIFT, the Institute for Fiscal Transparency, and they had a lot of experience with citizen budgets, and we got all of the state governments together to upload their data, create their citizen budgets, put it online, and we funded them to do that. And then what you have to do too, especially in the case of subnational budget transparency and fiscal openness, is we created a thing called a citizen accountability report. And you've probably heard about this, social audits, some way to get CSOs around the data to verify that the budget transparency is effectively presented and it's actually useful to people. So our first order of business was to get the governments of the states to publish their budget information, and the second order of business was to create venues like town halls, workshops where civil society, citizens themselves. So it's not always you want to make an opportunity for direct transparency or direct engagement, not just through CSOs. So in the case of Nigeria, we were lucky because they have a vibrant CSO community, very active on fiscal openness. So getting them together was important, but also getting citizens, parents, teachers, governors, elected officials to actually go to public town halls to discuss the budget data, and then collectively with the government, they would agree on next steps. We would write that up in a report, and that report would be validated and made public. So the next time we would have that meeting, we could see that they were actually using the data. The government was responding to needs, and we were seeing effective use of fiscal openness data. So that's one way that we worked in Nigeria. There's also the second most effective and most operational for us at the World Bank is participatory budgeting. As you all know, started in Brazil. Again, we partnered with People Powered to some extent to figure out, to get our head around what participatory budgeting might mean at the local level. And we have many examples of working with communities on participatory budgeting. The challenge there is really the allocation of money for participatory budgeting is very small. It's not super, it isn't representative of the total budget in a local municipality. It's a fraction of that. So there's effective ways you can engage citizens in that regard, but it's not holistic, and you need to make sure it's channeled into direct decision making. So those two options are really good. What we also encourage on fiscal openness, and what we learned is the OBI is an important index, but using the OBI, the IBP partners locally, can we create state level indexes that can help measure citizen openness? And that is in varying degrees in place. So in Nigeria, we again worked with partners of IBP and vendors locally to leverage the State of States report that Budget had created initially, an NGO in Nigeria, and that an organization called CIRDOC had basically replicated the IBP index and had rolled it out at the state level. So finding ways to measure fiscal openness at the state level is not easy, but it's important. I guess I don't know how I'm doing on time. What I would recommend is definitely focus. The commitments for OGP have always, in fiscal openness, have been relatively generic. I think state level targets and state level commitments is even more important. So OGP local is more important in that regard. The citizen accountability report is critical. We want to get beyond transparency because sometimes that's actually not as helpful as social accountability or accountability on the part of government. So you want to create these citizen accountability reports or state audit functions or social audit functions. But the key is who's going to run those, who funds those, who's going to make sure they continue after World Bank financing is over or after OGP commitments are completed. And then I would focus on sectors and services. I think the more you focus supply side things like open contracting, tax transparency, budget transparency around particular services that are delivered to individuals and voters and citizens, the more power that data has. I think we've been having sat through OGP since the beginning, I think we've spent too much time on the supply and not enough time focused on some detailed commitments that focus on services and that citizens really care about, right? And that's beyond just CSO community. That's what actual parents, teachers, voters, in the case of the bank, our government officials that care what people think of the local government. So trying to tie the fiscal openness around particular service delivery is important. Leveraging the OGP partnership is crucial. What we've noticed too at the bank is that the OGP multi-stakeholder forum is more or less effective at the national level, but as you go subnational, people don't even know what OGP is a lot of the time. So leveraging the OGP local program and potential MSF or multi-stakeholder forums at the local level is more important, but it does require more capacity because people don't really know exactly what to expect. There's not a lot of CSOs there's a lot of CSOs typically that work nationally, but as you move subnationally, they become more sparse. So anyway, those are my thoughts on fiscal openness. I've been doing it for a while. I'm happy to be part of the discussion. It is critical. It's now part of the bank's portfolio. It's something we do in the governance. In my unit, we do it in every country, and we're usually working on the procurement systems, the financial systems, the tax systems. So we're very close to the government on this with regards to this data, and we can help to liberate it. And that's usually part of the incentives for our lending is the conditionality is this money is available, but you have to do these things around fiscal openness. But so that's just my thoughts, Clora. I hope it didn't take too long. Thanks.
No, thank you very much, Stephen, for those insightful remarks and also for emphasizing the role of fiscal transparency in creating better governance structures and outcomes, and also being very honest about the challenges and opportunities this work entails at the local level. So thank you very much. I would share again the presentation and make sure that everyone is now seeing it. And I think that you have an opportunity if you could also interact as much as possible, use the chat to ask questions, make comments, and contribute through the session, please. And now we are going to go deeper into our session. So I would love to introduce a little bit of our next speakers. I think that I just go really far away from this, but okay. Transparency is a powerful tool to ensure public finances, our tax money are well spent. It's important to have transparency in the entire financial management process. So from initial planning and forecasting to tax collection and expenditure allocation to final auditing. Transparency fosters accountability, but also is a prerequisite for the participation. Our first panelist is Laura Castillo from the International Budget Partnership. Laura manages the implementation of the Open Budget Survey in Latin America and has over 7 years of experience in fiscal transparency. Today, she will share with us insights on fiscal transparency. Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Clara. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. And well, today I would like to explore the significance of fiscal transparency, its role in public budgeting, and how inclusive practice at the local level can improve community outcomes. And okay, so fiscal transparency, simply put, is about making government finance information accessible to the public. This information allows people, citizens, legislators, markets to understand how public resources are managed and ensure government accountability. Fiscal transparency isn't just about numbers. It is a cornerstone of good governance. It includes clarity, reliability, and timeliness of reports, ensuring that the public know how and where their tax revenues are spent. For example, a clear and reliable fiscal report means the public can easily access information and trust that it reflects the government true financial state. Timely release of the budget information help people make informed decisions, whether they are citizens holding the government accountable or investors assessing the country's economic health. Studies by organizations as the IMF have shown that increased fiscal transparency lead to lower borrowing costs, greater credibility for governments, and improved investor confidence. More transparent countries tend to have reliable budgets, which translate into better public services and macroeconomic stability. For instance, when a local government regularly publishes accessible budget information, it's not only gaining trust, but also fostering accountability, supporting economic stability, and enhancing public trust. In our IBP report, it was highlighted that the type and size of organization are important factors to consider when looking at data use. Grassroots organizations report using local data at the subnational and the facility level with higher frequency, while national think tanks report use of revenue, financing, and extra budgetary data. The report raised interesting questions around with whom CSOs should engage when advocating for more detailed and relevant budget data. A central finance minister may be able to provide more detailed budget data for the national departments, but might not be the best place to enable access to more detailed subnational budget data. The report findings also indicate that there may be more access points to budget information than we often assume. In addition to the national departments, provision and local governments often hold essential data that may not be easily accessible from national governments. Data at the subnational level, however, can be fragmented, as departments from different provinces or local governments may collect data in different formats or a different level of details. This lack of standard approaches to data collection make it much harder to compare data on the same sector or issue across subnational governments. Budget allocation and execution data are the most demanded at the subnational level. Additionally, there is growing interest in revenue information for monitoring and analysis. Okay, there. But transparency alone, as Stephen was saying, is not enough. Inclusive budgeting ensures that marginalized communities have a say in how public funds are used. Public participation in budget process leads to more efficient resources and better service delivery. But transparency, what for? The goal of public ability of fiscal information is not to have a data repository larger than the Great Library of Alexandria. It is about democratizing the information and democratizing decision-making. Countries with sufficient transparency practice have, on average, more robust oversight and better participation practice. Conversely, countries with insufficient transparency practice usually have lower quality oversight and participation practice. For example, municipalities that involve citizens in decision-making around the budget often see an increase in local tax compliance because people feel more connected to how their budget revenues are spent. For instance, South Korea Open fiscal data portal. I think there's a delay. Okay, great. Fiscal data includes a time series for revenue, expenditure, fiscal balance, and debt at the level of central government, local government, and local education. The data is highly disaggregated for division, ministry, and mandatory or discretionary spending, making it easier for citizens to understand how their taxes are spent. In Nigeria and Senegal, civil society organizations have worked with local governments to improve tax policies and services for small business owners and other servant groups. Looking deeper at these examples, in Nigeria, a collection of civil society organizations developed a simplified tax handbook for women small business owners, a one-stop information hub, helping them understand their tax rights and obligations. These efforts empower local entrepreneurs by providing clear and accessible information on taxes, thus fostering an environment where business could thrive. The Society for Women in Taxation provided free tax education to women in Kano and Cross River states. And as a direct result for these transparency and inclusion efforts, the Cross River State Parliament adopted a motion to investigate the issue on multiple taxation after parents who had received the tax training raised the issue. In Senegal, a similar coalition worked with local governments to perform tax collection for motorbike taxi drivers, which resulted in better services for driving, including insurance coverage. This initiative showcased how inclusive practice can not only improve governments, but also lead to tangible benefits for communities. Budgetary transparency also ensures that the allocation of public funds is equitable. Local governments must be held accountable for whether they're meeting their commitments, especially in areas like education, healthcare, and social services. For example, in South Africa, advocacy from civil society organizations led to changes in local government contracts and policies, which improved service delivery in informal settlements. Together, we were able to advocate for several measures to improve the implementation of basic services for informal settlements. On a local level, four metro municipalities have used our input on resident collection on regular data about the access to water, clean toilets, and waste removal, and amended the procurement contracts and reporting system to improve service delivery. On a provincial level, one provincial department used our input to develop a gender-responsive document policy for 25 municipalities. Oh, no, sorry. Okay. A particular area of focus is ensuring that budgets support historical and excluded populations. Budget documents should be detailed enough to show how different groups, like low-income citizens or marginalized communities, benefit from government spending. When budget data is presented in ways that highlights the financial impact on various demographic groups, it is easier for the public to hold governments accountable and ensure equitable spending. Clara, I'm not sure how I'm doing with time. Do I have one more minute? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So the level of transparency helps address inequality and support more equitable outcomes. A great example comes from Dominican Republic, which makes strides in fiscal transparency by providing alternative display of spending in its national plan for public sector. This plan shows how public funds are distributed across different groups, including children, women, and various geographical areas, demonstrating the budget impact on gender equality and regional development. By tracking the need of these groups over multiple years, the Dominican government is ensuring a strategic long-term investment to meet the SDGs. This approach allows for a better understanding of the budget longer-term effects on communities, helping to shape effective advocacy and keep development goals on track. Additionally, the Dominican Republic passed a law enabling public input on national spending through local consultation councils, named citizens meetings. These councils help communities propose investment priorities in areas like housing and social services, influencing national budget decisions. This initiative boosted public participation, enhanced government transparency, and improved outcomes for marginalized groups, including women and children. In summary, fiscal transparency and inclusive budgeting are powerful tools for improving governance and ensuring that the public resources are used effectively and fairly. Transparency helps build trust, reduce corruption, and improve financial stability. Inclusion ensures that everyone, especially marginalized groups, have a voice in the budgeting process. By embracing both fiscal transparency and inclusivity, local governments can better serve their communities and promote social equity. We at IBP have a very vast resources available for additional information. I'm going to be putting in the chat our main website, our latest OBS 2023 report, information about Asibi Kelane, that is the case that I mentioned for South Africa. Our link to our newsletter that also provide regular information about subnational pilots that we have implemented on the OBS, and of course for GIF, and also my email for further contact and questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, and definitely we would like to for you to share with us everything that you just said, any resources that you have, and to see in more detail what these examples are. And thank you for sharing those perspectives. Also for sharing the importance of data collection at the subnational level and creating inclusive budget processes and transparency efforts to further fiscal openness. Now, let's turn to participatory budgeting, a key mechanism for fostering public participation in fiscal decisions. So for this, we have the Abiodun Essiet from Abuja Municipality, who is an OGLC fellow and experienced leader in governance and community engagement. Today, she will discuss how participatory budgeting helps bridge the gap between local governments and their citizens, allowing them to shape the development priorities that matter the most to them. So the floor is yours, Abiodun. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Great.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm happy to be on the platform to share my experience about participatory budgeting while I was still at the municipal level. Now I'm currently serving with the President of Nigeria as a senior special assistant on community engagement, where I hope to also share some practical experiences on how including citizens in governance can build trust and also strengthen democracy in Africa. So thank you so much. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the objective of the presentation will focus on three thematics. First is to have a background, like the previous speakers have said, on participatory budgeting, then the importance of participatory budgeting and the learning experience from Abuja Municipal Area Council. Abuja Municipal Area Council is one of the local governments within the Abuja city. Abuja is the capital of Nigeria and is one of the biggest local governments in Nigeria. Next slide. So what is participatory budgeting? The previous speakers have mentioned a whole lot about it. It's a form of citizens' participation in which the citizens, they are involved in the process of deciding how public money is spent. There are key things that are highlighted here, which are also in yellow: the citizen participation, citizens' involvement, public funds. Participatory budgeting is also an umbrella term that covers the varieties of mechanisms that delegates, empowers, or influence other local budgets, investment, priority, economic spending to citizens. Then the last key concept about participatory budgeting is a democratic process in which citizens decide directly how to spend part of the public fund. So giving the power back to citizens. And I must say, at this point, participatory budgeting is one of the cornerstones for a successful democratic governance in Africa. Next slide. The importance, why is it so important for us to get our citizens involved in budgeting? It gives the local people the power to scrutinize and also monitor the process of budgetary allocation. It also gives citizens real control over where budget is spent. As such, budgets can be spent in a way that better reflects the strength, their needs, the aspirations of the population, and can be more effective. It also improves the government-citizens relationship, where citizens group can provide technical assistance to government or council members to improve transparency and also process. Remember, we said democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And participatory budgeting gives us an avenue to really strengthen democratic governance in Nigeria. Next slide. So from the learning experience from Abuja Municipal Area Council, we joined OGP 2020, and one of our first action plan for OGP was to see how we strengthen citizens' participation in our budgetary cycle. Our goal was to increase citizens' participation in the budget process, and the process that we use. The participatory tool was developed in partnership with the citizens and members of civil society organizations, which was disseminated to citizens to further aid their participation in budgetary process. We released a budget calendar, will allow the citizens to know when we start on the budget cycle, and we also carry them along using different social media platform and also physical meetings as well. The process, by simplifying the means of collection of suggestion as well into the budget. So before we introduce the participatory budgeting, the councillors who represent the different wards of the municipal were the ones that were given the mandate to, go about and bring about the needs of the citizen into the budget for the council. But this time around, we make sure that the citizens are carried along throughout the process of the budgeting. The citizens were also trained on how to use participatory budgeting tools. So we trained some of the councillors. We also asked them to also nominate citizens, members of their stakeholders within their constituency, to let them know about the tools that we are going to be using for the participatory budgeting. And this was done in partnership with other members of the civil society group in the council. Next slide. Next slide. So the action that we're taking, we have in Abuja Municipal Area Council, we're divided into 12 wards that makes the council, meaning 12 constituency, and each of those constituency has an elected councillor. So what we did was to divide the council into 3 geopolitical zones, into 3 zones. We have Zone A, Zone B, and Zone C. So a town hall meeting was held in various parts of the communities to collect the priorities of the needs that will be captured in our 2022 budget. And the process of getting the priority of those needs, we made the process inclusive. Even the councillor and also the municipal chair, who is the mayor of the council, was also participating in the process, and his needs were also captured in the process of data collection. And we made it so simple that there's no hierarchy in the collection of priority. Everybody has to work together to identify 2 major needs within their constituency that they feel it should be captured in the 20.
We stop here.
Yeah, I'm still here,
Okay,
sorry.
there you go. Great.
So citizen representatives from the CSOs were also invited. Sorry, I had the network issue. So for the first time in the council, we invited members of civil society organization to join the closed door meeting that we normally have at the council during the budget retreat. That was the first time where you see a member of civil society, because we took them along during the town hall meeting where we are collecting the priority needs of the people. And during the process of deliberating on what should be in the budget, we also invited members of the civil society to be present, to also make presentation to members of the council and monitor the process at which issues and priority are selected in 2022 budget. So the presence of the civil society was a reflection also of our commitment to ensure that the citizens are actively involved in the budgetary process. Next slide. Next slide. Can you hear me? Okay, next. Okay, thank you. So the result of the process and the actions that were taken was to improve government-citizens relationship, where citizen group provided technical assistance to council workers to improve the transparency of their project. And one of the priority needs of each of those words that we collected during their town hall meeting was captured in the 2022 budget with a cap of 20 million naira for each of those projects identified and selected by the community, which was one of the first things that has ever happened in the council before, for the citizens to actually identify the kind of projects that they want within their communities, and a physical and amount of money was budgeted into it. The process has also helped us to promote the trust of citizens in the government, and they were carried along from the beginning of the budgetary cycle up to the town hall meeting. And when the inclusion was made, the priority was made in the budget, they were also informed. And now 2024, all the projects selected by citizens have already been completed in Abuja Municipal Area Council. Next slide. I think that's all. Next slide, Messi. Okay, thank you so much. So this process has really promoted trust in government, because the citizens now see that the government is a form of government that does what they say. And the local government is the closest level of governance to the citizen. So when participatory budgeting is done at that level, it strengthens the governance level, and people are carried along in the governance process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abiodun, for shedding light on how participatory budgeting directly engages citizens in determining how public resources are used. Your experience also demonstrates that when communities are given the opportunity to the allocation of resources. Questions on the chat, and I am just going to read one from Diego Ramalho from Goiás in Brazil for you, Abiodun, to maybe try to answer if you can from your cell phone. Is that Brazil has long been recognized as a global participatory budgeting, but they have initiative and of your initiatives to ensure transparency. I will not have the time to give the floor to you again to respond to this, but if you could engage as much as you can the chat, there are some reflections from our attendants in that sense. So thank you. And remember to participate and interact as much as possible. All of the people that have joined us today, ask questions, make comments, contributes. That's really a good way to engage in this discussion. So now moving to participation in audits, often more attention is paid to participation in expenditure allocation and planning than after monies are spent. However, during the auditing phase, citizen participation can play a crucial role in ensuring accountability for how money was used. For this, we're joined by Renzo Lavin, who has been working on this topic for several years, most recently with Inter-American Development Bank as a consultant. Renzo is a seasoned expert in fiscal openness, having worked extensively with national and international organizations, think tanks, and public sector institutions to promote greater integrity in government processes. Today, Renzo will share how involving citizens in the audit process not only increases trust, but also helps ensure that public resources are used effectively and in line with community priorities. Renzo, we're looking forward for your insights. So over to you.
Thank you, Clara. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here to talk about audits, and it connects perfectly with the previous presentation. As audits, as you know, is the last part of the budget cycle, and as not many of you are master Jedis on fiscal openness, I will go through a few basics on audits, and then I will move to how an open government approach can help improve the impact and effectiveness of audits, and try to talk about some tools that you can think of at the local level to involve citizens and CSOs in the audit process. So first of all, who are the auditors? And they're basically two. It's legislatures or at the local level, and that conduct a political control, political oversight of how the money has been spent. We're talking about not just like participation on how the resources have to be allocated, but now is what happened with the resources already? What happened with the money? Where did it go? Was it spent in a good way? So legislatures do political control, but then we have, and depending on the structure of the country, the constitutional framework, the laws of the country, whether you have a federal state or a unitary state, you have always some kind of body that conducts technical oversight, technical audits, and they're called different ways in different countries. They could be Court of Accounts, Controller Generals, Auditor Generals, different names, but they do more or less the same kind of work. Also, depending on the country and the context, they could do, and this is the most typical, they could do ex post audits. That means once the fiscal year has ended, they will decide what to put an eye on and to audit. And there is some audit bodies that would do real-time evaluations. They could do government procurement monitoring, for example, or public works monitoring as they're being executed. But this is not that common. Then they conduct different type of audits with different goals. So there are financial audits, compliance audits, and performance audits. And this is all governed by international standards that have to do with auditing and accounting rules. But basically, financial audits have to do with the accuracy of financial statements, whether the money that the government said that they spent corresponds with the papers that they have, the financial statements. Compliance audits is about checking whether the government has followed the rules and laws in implementing programs and policies that involve money, public money. And finally, and these are less common, but they're the most attractive, are performance audits, because they have to do with results, with value for money. Like it's what auditors are going to check here is the effectiveness and efficiency of the use of resources in order to obtain results. Let's see whether the public school that was supposed to be built was actually built, and the materials that were used were of the quality that the vendor had committed to use, for example. So as you can imagine, the impact at the local level, especially at the local level, could be huge. They can, if audits are conducted well, they can have a huge impact in the provision of public services. They can help build trust in how the government money is spent. They can empower citizens that with this kind of technical information can demand for better governance. But if we do have these guys that are professional auditors that are doing this, that are paid to do this, are doing all these fantastic things, why do we still have the sensation that this is not working very well? And it's not just a sensation, it does not work very well. And I want you to discuss with you on the slides are not moving. Yeah, here. On why, oh, sorry, I went too far. Let's see. Oh, this is crazy now. Hold on a second, please. I was being too impatient. Yeah, there we are, challenges, right? So why is this not working very well? And there are like many reasons for this that have to do with the institutional structure of the audit institution, their constraints, what they can do and cannot. So sometimes they have limited resources, financial or human resources, so they don't have the capacity to conduct like good quality audits. Sometimes they lack autonomy, so they suffer political pressures on that, so they do not oversee what they should be overseeing, but what they're told to oversee and in the way that they're told to oversee. Sometimes their work is too technical, too complex, so that it's not so citizens cannot relate that well and cannot use the information that is in those reports. And not all, also like the media cannot use them because they don't understand them or they think they're not useful. Sometimes they come too late. So as as I was saying, it's most of the time exposed audit. It means that the money that they're seeing, whether it was spent well, was spent like 1, 2, sometimes 3 years ago. So who cares now if they did well 3 years ago? So there's something there that makes them like less attractive. And the last one is compliance issues. Like they do the whole work, they might do a good audit, like with professional standards, they can have like wonderful findings about what happened with the money, and they give recommendations on how to improve a government program or policy, but that goes to the legislature. Nobody reads it. The media doesn't read it. Civil society organizations don't read it. And the recommendations are not followed up on. They're not implemented. So my point here is that an open government approach, this slide is coming too late, but I don't want to press again. Let me see. Well, this is not helping. 1 second. Yeah, I think that's the one, open government approach. Yeah. So my point here is that how can we help these auditors to make their work better and to get the most out of the audit work that we're putting money on also as citizens for a specific government body to control what the executive does with the public budget. So if we incorporate open government principles into the work of audits, we can get some good results. And experience around the world, initiatives around the world show that this can be done better if we open up the process, if we include citizens, the media, civil society organizations. We can increase the capacity of the technical bodies for making better audits. We can shift incentives in order to for public officials, when they know that there is higher public scrutiny, they will pay more attention to what the auditors are saying that that should be done, or what kind of corrections can be made to policy. And this would lead ultimately to higher accountability and to better services if audits have the impact that we're looking for. But this is just principles, and you will want to know, but give me like some practical tips. So how do we do it, or how some people around the world are doing it? And so I would like to see here to share with you some ideas on how audits can be done better, going through what we call the audit cycle. So as we have a budget cycle, we also have within the audit phase, we have a cycle too. So we have, if we're going to audit, we first need to plan, and that's what these guys do. So they plan what they're going to, because they cannot control, they cannot oversee everything. They cannot fiscalize everything. So they will choose. They will say, next year, we're going to see what happened with this program on reducing the level of the number of children dropping out of school in our school. So we're going to see whether this program was well implemented, the money was well spent, and the outcomes were achieved. So they have to plan. But if they plan alone, think of these auditors in their office, sometimes they don't have the resources, and if they're planned with their own, by their own, they're missing something. So they're missing what citizens are demanding actually for them to look at. So planning could be participatory. So there are a lot of tools for identifying what are the priorities for citizens. Usual reporting channels that could be online or in person, channels to send suggestions of what programs or policies to audit, meetings with groups of citizens to discuss what are the priorities in the city or at the state level, surveys, whatever. There are many channels. The idea is that you can think as OGP local people, you can think of channels and tools to improve how the planning is done so that the demands of citizens are taken into account and they focus on areas that are actually a priority and not just what the audit office is thinking in their by their own. Then the execution. So they decide we're going to see this education program. It's not the same if you only have the accountant, the auditor, and an education specialist there, like doing their job and filling up forms, that if you have, for example, a group of citizens that are very concerned about the quality of education and they do know what the problems are with the teachers and with the infrastructure in the school, and they have already reports that they can contribute to the audit. These audits that include input from citizens and civil society organizations have much more to say about what the problem is and what the recommendations to improve the program should be. So there are experiences all around the world about social audits, participatory audits, surveys during audits that can be conducted. The other two phases is, well, when we already have a report, what happens? And the problem here usually is that the reports are very technical, very long. Nobody will understand what's in there, and they're very boring. So what can we do to improve that? We need we need something that people can understand. So citizen reports, we need visualizations. So a report, maybe it's very long, but the main thing is these two figures, these two numbers about what happened with this education program. And saying education as an example could be transportation, healthcare, whatever area you're working on. Auditors look at those programs and policies. So let's do in the dissemination phase, let's do reports more attractive and more useful for citizens to act upon that. If they have a report that is very powerful, they can go and demand for accountability with that technical report. It's not an opinion, it's an auditor's report. And finally, the follow-up. Sometimes you have the report, you have the recommendations, but nobody's following them. The government is not implementing them. So there are also some ideas, some tools that are being implemented to increase the cost of non-implementing recommendations. Sometimes, most of the time, these agencies don't have teeth. So this is a crucial part of it. How do we do to use their work, their technical good quality work and reports to have an impact, to be used? So online trackers, rankings saying this area of government is doing well implementing recommendations, this other doesn't. Going to the media to put an eye on that. I'm finishing here to conclude. I'm sharing, this is a report that we just released at the Inter-American Development Bank that I wrote with Nicolas Dassen, which is called Citizen Participation Government Audits through Digital Tools. This is focused on at the national level, but most of the cases could be adapted to the local level, either states or provinces and municipalities, towns. As what's interesting there is not just like how they did it exactly, but the idea and what they got out of it. So there are 60 cases around the world in 30 countries. I will be more than happy if you take a look at that and want to discuss. Please reach out. I can share the link on the chat because you're not going to be able to go to the link here. That's all. Thank you very much.
Great, Renzo. Thank you very much. And yes, please post the links on the chat. There you have a couple of questions there already. People are engaging with your presentation. It was great to hear what we can do differently and how to participate in the audit cycle. Your work illustrates the participation in the budget process, so it should be considered in every stage of the processes, including audit and oversight. It was really interesting. Thank you very much. And now, for our final segment, we'll be diving into the Open Government Challenge. To explain this exciting initiative, I'm pleased to hand it over to my colleague Adna, who will walk us through the next steps and how we can get involved. So Adna, now the floor is yours.
Thanks, Clara. Hello, everybody, and thanks, Renzo. That was a really good presentation. It actually is a very good tie-in to the Open Government Challenge because some of the concepts in your presentation come up here. So my name is Adna Karamech-Oates. I'm with the Policy and Partnerships team at the OGP Support Unit, supporting our members on specific policy areas that they are pursuing in their action plans. And one of the ways that we are doing this is by encouraging more ambition from our members, right? We are now more than 10 years into the partnership, and it is, we've seen a lot of action plans, we've seen a lot of different initiatives, but now I think, especially in areas like fiscal openness, that have been part of the partnership since the very, very beginning. This was actually, one of the areas, probably one of the most tackled areas in open government since the founding of the partnership. I think we can go beyond, and that some of the actions can become a little bit more focused and more ambitious, including in some of the ways that Renzo discussed. So the challenge does ask that of the, sorry, I'm having the same problem as Renzo with the slides. It's just not reacting the way I need them to react. But these are the areas that were defined as, the areas that are crucial to strengthen democracy, and that we need to create greater ambition around collectively from the membership, from national members, from local members, from the whole OGP community. So specifically on fiscal openness, the challenge to the membership and where we are seeking more ambition around is this question on public oversight and inclusion, and how to advance those type of reforms across the budget and spending cycle. Specifically, what are the kinds of actions that are considered these more ambitious actions within the Open Government Challenge? So the first one is to strengthen the role of the legislature and other relevant institutions in, approving, monitoring, reviewing, and publishing the budget, and any kind of fiscal and debt-related data and reports. So that's one set of actions that are considered more ambitious than what we have seen in the past. Another one is reforms or activities that empower independent fiscal oversight institutions, such as, Supreme Audit institutions, as well as ombudsman offices, to enforce transparency and accountability throughout the budget cycle. So how can you empower them in this process more? That's another set of actions. Another one is to promote participatory mechanisms, particularly trying to target underrepresented groups to inform spending priorities. So while there have been all sorts of participatory mechanisms in the past, I think, one of the things we'd like to see going forward is focus on underrepresented groups and improving their voice in the informing of spending priorities. And then finally, combining online and offline tools to promote participation across the budget and spending cycle. So a lot of this, again, is a really nice continuation of what Renzo was discussing. But this is where these are the sort of more specific areas that we would consider more ambitious from the partnership. And how, if you're interested, if you're a member of the local program, how can you participate in the Open Government Challenge? Well, there are a few ways. Yeah, here's my slide. So the first way is to co-create a relevant commitment or more in your OGP action plan. So, you fill out, you do your action plan as normal, and we have amended the template to say, is this a challenge commitment, right? And then you have to explain why it is going above and beyond, right? Why it's ambitious. So it can be part of your action plan. Another way is to submit a standalone action or commitment, which is independent of your OGP action plan. So this is something that we heard a lot from the community. We have institutions that are perhaps not involved in the multi-stakeholder forum, or things happen outside of the action plan, the co-creation cycle, and we don't want to lose those innovations, right? We don't want to lose those opportunities. So the challenge is a way to enable new institutions, as well as things that are happening outside of the cycle, and make them part of the open government community and good examples for others to draw from. So that's another way to participate. And finally, you can submit an entry for the Open Government Awards. We are hosting the Open Government Partnership Summit in Spain next year. Many of you may have seen the announcement, the official announcement. At the summit, we will have awards recognizing really innovative ideas around the challenge. So if this is something you're interested in, you can also submit an entry. There's going to be a process for that, but everything that was already submitted, of course, will also be considered for the awards. None of these are mutually exclusive options. So if you want more information, I will provide my email in the chat, but happy to answer any questions about this as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edna, for explaining what an ambitious fiscal openness commitments look like to meet the Open Gov challenge. To have more information about the challenge, go to the OGP website, and you will easily find information and the main webpage of OGP. So thank you very much, and you can go into the information there at the OGP webpage. So as we close, I encourage all of you to reflect on the different approaches we've discussed today: fiscal transparency and inclusion, participatory budgeting, participation in audits, and how they apply in your context. Together, these approaches are key to promoting fiscal openness in local governments. So with that in mind, let's summarize a few takeaways that highlight the importance of these approaches, right? So increasing transparency and promoting greater public participation, public finance management can help curb corruption at the local level and increase efficiency and impact of public funds, especially in local governments where every cent is important. Also, participation in budget allocation is an essential tool to open the doors to citizens to determine public priorities. Although participatory budgeting has been around for many years, making them more inclusive is one of the next challenges. The auditing process is as important as the budget preparation process. Citizens and civil society can have a role in ensuring funds where this does not happen. Sorry, I wasn't sharing. Sorry. And the OGP challenge calls on our members to make public budgets more participatory and inclusive, and improve accountability by strengthening the role of oversight institutions in the budget process with open government approaches. So this is where our session finishes, but let me, tell you that you can access the video of this session later this week on our deep dive section in the OGP website as well. And I don't want to leave without inviting you to our next final session on October 9th, which is next Wednesday, same time, to discuss strategies, services, innovations related to open data and how they can contribute to develop responsive solutions for communities. And if you want to know more about OGP Local, do not hesitate to visit the OGP Local website. Also, join our community in Slack and our local thematic circles, and make sure you check your local roundup to stay updated. Thank you all very much for your participation, and have a great rest for the day. See you next week. Thank you, everyone.